Are you listening? Damn.
Welcome to another edition of AFC North, the position ranking today. Last ranking of the offense, at least. We're going to do defense after that. I've been hearing this a lot from my Ravens guys. I'm sure Tony has been from the Steelers too. Like, can we go move to defense?
Yeah.
It was brutal. Okay. The Browns getting all the love. We're getting there. Don't forget.
One week away. We're 1 week away from all the good Steeler talk.
Twitter, we have our polls out there, so go check them out. I'll pull the poll where you are later. I think this poll was competitive. Last week, the Browns killed it again on the running back group. It was like 80%, 85%. I can't remember.
And it was. I know I kind of missed last week's show because I was on the road. It was unanimous amongst us too, right? No one here put anyone.
It was unanimous.
The Browns.
Yep, Browns first.
We're number one.
So. Also, remember, we have Super Chat available. So if you want to comment, derail, or even just have a question, Super Chat is available for us. So I know we were late. Again, there's a reason why we start 5:45. There's some wiggle room. It's just a wiggle room. And it's fun backstage. I laugh hard. I'm not going to laugh. I laugh hard. Backstage.
Yeah, it's my fault, guys. This week was my fault. I was late, and then I just sat down in my room, and I don't know what came over me, but I just started thinking about the Cleveland Cavaliers and Dan Gilbert's ownership over them and how pathetic they are, and how everybody who ever leaves the organization ends up doing great things. Shout out Jordan Clarkson. You know what I mean? Shout out Tyronn Lue. You know what I mean? We're gonna trade Kevin Love, and then Kevin Love gonna have a resurgence, just like Carmelo, baby. Like, it's gonna happen. There's something about the organization that when LeBron's not there, got that Dan Gilbert too. I pray that Dan Gilbert gets an opportunity to buy the Detroit Pistons so he can do this to his own city instead of the Cavs, because I want to cheer for the Cavs again, but they'll be pathetic forever.
And with that note, there's a super chat here. It's a super chat, and then we're gonna start this. You see, this is how you derail the show, or you might have your comment. Justin, shout out to you. Thank you for the donation. Have you forever met in person? To be fair, we have not, but in October we might. So stay tuned. Yeah. We may have some special things going on. So, but we haven't. Thank you for the donation. Thank you.
But individually, we've kind of met up, right? Like I met Ace.
Yeah, I've met Sonny before.
I met you.
Right.
Yeah. But we gotta form those Exodia pieces. The chat is hilarious. They're bringing up pieces I didn't even think about. Kevin Porter, you kind of know about that one. James Jones, Executive of the Year, was just sitting on the end of the Cavs bench, hoping that the Cavs will look. But hey, David Griffin, James Jones.
Looking for executive, they have one on their bench. So
what do we need to do with anybody who's good in the front office? Nah, man. Now we got Kobe Altman with his iPhone 10 hairline, just out here trading dudes for nothing. Like, oh my goodness, boy, the Cavs. How do people, like, honestly, if there are real Cavs fans in here that watch every game, how do you do it? I did it when they were terrible, when they had Kyrie, but at least they had Kyrie. Kyrie was fun. What are you watching now? Colin Sexton,
you don't love Colin Sexton?
Colin Sexton getting 30, dribbling with one hand, like just going straight to the rim. Like it's rough, man. It's rough.
You watch for Kevin Love's on-court temper tantrums, right? Isn't that what you watch for at this point?
You can get that on Twitter. Without all the without all the other garbage. Why I gotta watch the Cavs blow leads and not win?
Kevin Love accepts his invitation. I'm like, the Team USA didn't even accept his invitation. Like, what?
Dog, nobody wants him there.
Yeah,
nobody. The fans don't want him there. He don't want to be here, but he's here.
I like that.
I think he's going there to
Davis and the Orioles.
He's trying to talk to somebody there, like, get me out of Cleveland.
He's been trying to get out of here? He assumed when he signed the contract. All right, I'll do the one little reunion year as the one lone Cavalier left from 2016 when we had Matthew Dellavedova back on the roster for whatever reason. And then, they didn't trade
Pay
him.
your respects.
They didn't trade him. He's like, why am I still here? And Cavs fans are like, yo, why is the least memorable person of the big three? Like, the guy had 9 points in game 7. Like, I don't even think he had that many. But that's the dude we got to remember this whole run by. Nah, we can't keep Kyrie. We can't coexist with LeBron, Dan Gilbert. Nah, we got to push him out. Yeah, this is what we do, baby. We lost LeBron twice because of Dan Gilbert.
Dan Gilbert will make a statue of Kevin Love before you get something about
LeBron.
I'm looking forward to us trading Colin Sexton for a combination of Markelle Fultz and Ben Simmons. That's going to be the backcourt of the year, baby. We're going to average 5 points all year from both players. That's what's up. Shout out to Cavs, man. They'll do that.
And with that note, you see, it is fun. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead. Today's tight ends, guys. Today is the tight end group. I'm very curious here. I'm gonna start with you, Tony. I'm very curious to see where you put these tight end number 4th. Who's your 4th?
Pretty obvious.
Yeah. I'm gonna be kind of surprised if we don't agree on 4 and 3. I think 2 and 1 is gonna be we might end up in a silly argument there. We'll see when we get there. Because even as I went back and forth today as I was doing these rankings between 2 and 1, but no, 4 for me. It's the Cincinnati Bengals. Uzoma is coming off of this Achilles. I'm assuming he's going to play. I mean, Achilles is the one of all the major injuries you can get now. Achilles is the one still that modern medicine doesn't let you necessarily always come back from 100%. Although, we just watched Kevin Durant, and he looked pretty good in that series coming off of his Achilles. So, we'll see what Uzoma looks like. Drew Sample, though, this was tight end 1 last year for the Cincinnati Bengals. I'll give Drew Sample this. He played the most snaps of any tight end in the division, 868 snaps. So, your best ability is availability. So there you go. He was out there. Everything else about him was not great. He had the lowest yards per catch of any tight end in the division, the lowest average depth of target of any tight end in the division. And he just wasn't good. And I think Ace has been telling us this for about 2 years now. So not a surprise there. And yeah, so for me, Cincinnati's an easy number 4.
Ace.
Yeah, man, I think Tony pretty much hit the nail on the head. You got CJ Uzoma, who's probably the best tight end, but by NFL standards, you'd probably consider him an average tight end. And he's our best tight end. He's probably the most athletic. He's huge, but he is coming off of an Achilles injury, which obviously can affect his speed and things of that nature. He's supposed to be out there, but he did actually have a pretty solid report with Joe Burrow before he went down, but he went down week 2.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see what he can do. He's going into a contract year. This is one of the reasons why I wanted the Bengals to address the tight end position in the draft, because you really have CJ Uzoma in a contract year, and then you got Drew Sample, who only had 1 touchdown and 800 snaps, like Tony just alluded to.
Wow.
And that's not a guy that is going to scare defenses. I'm not trying to be mean or anything to Drew Sample. I'm pretty sure he probably knows that I'm not his biggest fan, but it's nothing personal. It's simply that I think that he's a number 2 tight end. And, this is a big year for him to try to emerge and do something, but it's Drew Sample. You know what Drew Sample is. And then you got Thaddeus Moss, who actually might have a legit chance to actually leapfrog Drew Sample, because all Drew Sample could do is get 1 touchdown.
Yeah.
So if he gets 2 touchdowns, I think he's leapfrogging Drew Sample there on the roster.
I forgot Thad Moss is still on the roster. I forgot about that. We did a whole episode dedicated to Thaddeus.
And Bengals fans, they love Thad Moss a lot. I think that he's a solid player. I would kind of bench the expectations. He's not going to be the next Antonio Gates, but he can be a solid piece. I think that he does have a rapport with Joe Burrow. The first guy that Joe Burrow came out the first day of OTAs was Thaddeus Moss. So I think that means that he's going to make the roster. He'll probably have 2 touchdowns, maybe 3. We'll see. But then after you get past those guys, you got a guy in Mason Schreck who just never has really been what the Bengals thought he was going to do. He's just kind of been a guy on the roster. He hasn't done anything. He's supposed to be more of a receiving tight end. He really reminds me of a bootleg Chase Kaufman from our Bengals fans listening. That's pretty much what he's been. You've got Mitchell Wilcox, which I talked to Jeff Hobson. He talks about that they rave about Mitchell Wilcox, but at the end of the day, Mitchell Wilcox was an undrafted tight end who couldn't even break the tight end rotation and get get any snaps over Ethan Carter. And we all know Ethan Carter is just a blocking tight end and Drew Sample. So at the end of the day, this is hands down to me the worst position in the division when it comes to tight end. It's definitely my Bengals.
Okay, let me go before we go to Q2 Super Chats real quick. Tony says, I hate to say it, but we're the Texans of the NBA. And he's talking about the Cavs.
Yeah.
And then Rex, shout out to you. I also think for the
Cavs won a title.
By the way, Logan, I know you don't mean wrong in the comment section there. He made this comment right before Tony left it, which I agree with. I don't even think we are as good as the Texans are in the NBA. But Logan said Gilbert has had some bad decisions, but he still got his. Yeah, Gilbert was the one getting 40 points back to back in game 6 and 7. That's what's up. Yeah.
He
Gilbert
personally brought LeBron back. Yeah.
He's the one that reached out to LeBron, not LeBron reaching out to him. Right. That's how that happened. Also,
executive of the year.
Yeah, are we gonna forget that Dan Gilbert was the man who okayed? Hey man, let's get Anthony Bennett #1 overall, baby. Let's do that one. How does he live that one down? How do people not talk about that more? Like nobody was asking you to draft Anthony Bennett #1 overall that year, but Dan Gilbert had a hunch, so Dan Gilbert drafted quite possibly the worst #1 overall pick in NBA. Not even quite possibly, quite obviously the worst #1 overall pick in NFL history. So shout out to Dan, man.
I mean, my Wizards did Kwame Brown, but Kwame Brown at least stick in the NBA for a little
Kwame Brown was supposed to be good. He just didn't. He wasn't good. Well, he was okay, but he wasn't good like people thought he was. Like that made sense. You can't blame the Wizards. Like who are you going to take otherwise in that draft? Kwame Brown's supposed to be this high school phenomenon. Okay, you take Kwame Brown. What about Anthony Bennett? Played 2 years at UNLV. What about that says #1 overall draft pick? He wasn't first. It was a bad class overall, though. It was a bad class, but you could have drafted somebody who was at least first team in their conference. He was second team Mountain West or something like that. Like this made no sense. This made no sense. There's no way it made any sense. It made no sense when they did it. It still makes no sense to me.
Oh man,
Victor Oladipo was there.
Yeah, well, and before anyone points out that Giannis was in that class, yes, he was, but no one thought Giannis was going to be #1.
Nobody thought Anthony Bennett was going to be #1 overall.
Well, he was closer than Giannis.
You could have drafted Otto Porter at #1 in that draft, and that would have been a vastly better decision than Anthony Bennett. Shout out to Dan Gilbert. All those great decisions, championship decisions Dan Gilbert made for the Cleveland Cavaliers. But yeah, shout out to Carl Nassif, top selling jersey pass today. Right. That's great to know. Support there. Make sure people feel welcome to be who they are. That's awesome. Carl Nassif, former Brown. I really liked him when he was here. He's kind of famous for the Hard Knocks thing where he did the Taylor Swift and the accounting thing. So it's great to see him.
Compounding interest. He taught us all. He taught us all about compounding.
He's always seemed like a fun guy, even though his advice on compounding interest was just not accurate at all. I don't think that was how compounding interest worked. But hats off to him. Shout out to him, and I hope the best for him.
Okay, well, Q, you can keep it rolling with the TE. Who's your tight end, the #4 tight end group?
Yeah, come on. It's Cincinnati. It's Cincinnati. Yeah.
You almost said Pittsburgh there. I was like, what?
I was going to troll Tony there, but no. It's Cincinnati. It's Cincinnati. I don't think Drew Sample starts on any other AFC North team, and that's their #1 tight end. So by default, you got to be the worst room at that point, right? When we're talking about Thad Moss getting serious snaps, when Thad Moss was fighting to make practice squads last year, it's not a good situation. CJ Uzomah coming back from an Achilles injury, double bad situation. Ace mentioned a third dude. I've never heard of that guy in my life. He was like, yeah, we know he's a blocking guy. I was like, I don't know who that is at all. But it's a rough situation. Look, I've lambasted them for not going harder at tight end. If you wanted to do something about the offensive line, tight end's a great place to start. Felt like they could have went harder there. This is pretty much the same room, except for CJ Uzomah is now hurt and worse now. Yeah, it's bad. We ranked it 4th last year. They've not improved, and now it's 4th again.
Yeah. I would say this. I went and said like, okay, all I can remember is the Steelers tight end, dropping balls all over the place. We'll talk about him soon, but I was like, okay, they might be 4th, and then I went and looked at the Bengals Rumours like, never mind, never mind, never mind. Bengals, sorry, you take the fourth. I
I'm
had
about to
nothing
say,
else
at
to
least
say.
we remember Eric Ebron doing something with the football in the end zone. Like, you know what I mean? Like sometimes he catches it, sometimes he don't. But he's dropped more touchdowns than I think the whole Cincinnati tight end room has caught. So
Yep, no, I agree. I thought, okay, the Steelers, and then like I said, I couldn't remember anybody from from the Bengals. And then as soon as I went and looked at the church samples, like, oh man, I forgot samples.
Yeah.
Number one TE. Okay, I can't do it. Bengals fourth. But Tony, you have anything to say about our sponsors today?
Of course, we're back with Manscaped. You know, summer is coming. Are you ready to unveil your beach bod? You're in luck. Our friends at Manscaped just launched their 4th generation performance package, which includes the Lawnmower 4.0. You heard that right. The 4.0, it's brand new. Complement your summer bod with a trim from the leaders in male grooming. The sun is shining and calling your name, fellas. Join the 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get ready for hot guy summer by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with the code AFC North Talk. And that's all one word, AFC North Talk. It's time to bundle up with the Manscaped Performance Package 4.0. Inside, you're going to get that Lawnmower 4.0, the brand new Lawnmower 4.0, the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, the Crop Preserver, the ball deodorant, which you need, and then the Crop Reviver toner, the Performance Boxer briefs, which are fantastic boxers, and the travel bag to hold it all when you're traveling. First of all, that performance package includes that 4.0. It's an insane, I dare I say, the GOAT of ball trimmers. Their 4th generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. The Lawnmower 4.0 has 7,000 RPM motor and a new multifunction on-off switch, and you can engage that travel lock. Did I mention this trimmer is waterproof as well? You can now use it in the shower. You want to take your grooming game to an even further level. The Performance Package 4.0 includes the Weed Whacker to chop your worst weeds in the top of your nose or your ear. That Weed Whacker also waterproof and has a 9,000 RPM motor powered by a 360-degree rotary dual blade system. Seal the deal with Manscaped's liquid formulations before heading outside. Use the Crop Preserver ball deodorant to keep your game in the heat. Then, after trimming the lawn and whacking the weeds in the heat, give your beach balls a boost using the Crop Preserver. They even threw in 2 gifts to their Performance Package 4.0, the boxers and that shed travel bag. And you can get 20% off and free shipping, but you got to use the code AFC North Talk. All one word, AFC North Talk at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code AFC North Talk at manscaped.com.
And I know we talked about last year, you know, football players talking about being in the best shape of their life. Get your balls in the best shape of your life this summer.
Yes,
definitely. And make sure it's also lowercase as well. I had someone hit me in the DMs. They were like, bro, I've been trying to get the Manscaped for a while. I can't get the promo code to work. I was able to send him over a video. So if you need any help from either one of us, don't hesitate to hit us in the DMs or something like that. Send him a quick video, showed him that the AFC North Talk worked that way. So it's not capped. So also make sure to put in the lowercase AFC North Talk, all one word, like Tony has said.
And last time about it does work for our European followers. We did check and it does work. So go check Manscaped, great product. Okay, let's go with number 3. Ace, who you have in number 3, man?
Number 3 was a tough one for me, but when I looked at it, because I feel like number 3, they actually have a lot of potential. I really like the top 2 tight ends that they have there. However, based off of what Eric Ebron did last season with the drops, he's just very inconsistent. But it's going to be the Steelers for me, and it's simply because there's some question marks with their top 2 tight ends. I really like, I don't know how to say his name. I guess it's Freiermuth.
Freiermuth. Yeah, you got it right.
I like him as a second tight end. Some people have actually compared him to a great value Gronk. I think that he's a guy that can definitely have an impact for them. Eric Ebron isn't super terrible. He just is super inconsistent. He's either going to be a guy that can come out and score about 5 touchdowns for you and make some, head-turning plays, or he's going to be a guy that's going to drop the ball and frustrate you, or he's going to do something to negate that offense. And so that's the big question mark, and that's why I could not put the Steelers higher than number 3 on my list. But I really do like those 2 tight ends. Even though they're on the Steelers, I still like those guys. It's still solid. But I can definitely relate to the Eric Ebron stuff, having a guy like Jermaine Gresham. So a lot of Jermaine Gresham stuff going on there, and we'll have to see what happens moving forward.
Tony.
My number 3 is the Baltimore Ravens. Let me tell you why Mark and I'm just kidding, it's the Steelers. The Steelers are number 3.
I was ready to catch the check.
Come on, we had to
burn the chat down.
No, I can't do this anyway.
No, okay. So the Steelers are number 3 here, obviously, because I don't even take rookies into account, so I can't even take Freiermuth into the account for these rankings, even if you like Freiermuth, and I don't really like Freiermuth coming out. So yeah, for me, it's all about Eric Ebron. Now, here's one look, and I always joke about Ebron 2018. The Steelers are getting 2018. They're getting 2018 Eric Ebron. He's due to come back to 2018 form. The interesting thing that if you look at Ebron and you look at what he did in 2018 versus 2020, the per game numbers for Ebron in 2018 versus 2020 actually not that different. He averaged 7 targets per game, 4 catches per game in both, and his drop rate. We get on Ebron for the drops. Now he's always had bad hands, right? His drop numbers have always been bad in his career. He actually, as a percentage of his targets, dropped less passes last year than he did in 2010 when he had the big year with 13 touchdowns, right? The real issue for him this year was not necessarily the drops or was he getting the ball enough. It was the average depth of target. It was the entire problem of the Steelers offense as a whole, which is they just didn't they didn't throw the ball downfield enough. Everything was underneath. And that slid his numbers way down. His average depth of target in 2018 was 9.5. His average depth of target this year was 7.1, 2.5 yards less. And so that took his yards per carry down or yards per catch, I should say, from 11.4 back in 2018 to just 10, the lowest of his career this year. You'll see a lot of that lowest of their career in the Steelers, Randy Fichtner offense last year. The other issue for Ebron last year is he just wasn't as effective in the red zone as I think Steeler fans had imagined. Certainly when you look back at 2018, Eric Ebron, 13 touchdowns that year, a lot of that coming in the red zone. And of course, when you're not throwing the ball down the field, when you're not throwing Ebron the ball down the seam, he's not going to get the big plays either. That's going to cut that touchdown number. And he's super limited as a run blocker. And that's the other issue for Ebron that doesn't get talked about enough. Forget about the drops and all that. And I think, because Deontay had such a problem with drops, and then, Ebron's always been having a problem with drops. He kind of got lumped in with that. The 7 drops that Ebron had last year weren't as bad as I think people want to talk about. His blocking wasn't great though. And that was a real problem within the entire offense. So
he's never been a great blocker.
Never been a good blocker. They tried to work on that with him last year. Obviously, no one on that offensive line was a good run blocker last year. So Ebron fit right in. But I think, when you look at what the Steelers want to do this year, where they do want to get back to 12 personnel, they do want to get back to running the football more. It's going to be tough. Can you trust Eric Ebron in that 12 personnel? And do you want to run his way, or is he going to be a liability on the edge? Because that'll shut things down. We talked about how predictable the Steelers were last year. If Ebron can't be a good run blocker, and you come out in 12, people know you're going to run to Freiermuth's side because he is a better blocker. Well, then you're as predictable as you were a season ago. So that has to be solved. But yeah, for me, the Steelers are 3, not Baltimore.
Q.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go to the Steelers 3, and I see some people being a little bit unfair about what Eric Ebron in the comment. Read one that said Eric Ebron is the Anthony Bennett of the NFL. That's not true. Eric Ebron can dribble. Anthony Bennett can't. Okay, so
and he used to play basketball too.
Yeah,
Ebron.
Yeah, Eric Ebron's really talented at basketball. He could dribble with the football. I've seen him do it multiple times here.
Did it about 7 times last year.
Yeah, and it's like I think the reason the drops for him kind of get they feel more than what they actually are is just because like the times that he's had those drops have been just like either they have been really inexcusable, like you're wide open and you're dropping them, or like really critical drops. So sometimes that can make it seem bigger, which it's kind of how football works, I guess. But the next thing I want to say here about the Steelers is that I feel like they're going to be a decent tight end room ultimately. I think Eric Ebron's fine as a number 1. I don't think he's going to be the number 1 of like an elite tight end group, but like if you can use him and pair him up with more block heavy tight ends, which they have with Pat Freiermuth, they have with Zach Gentry. Kevin Rader, dude, still on the roster. He's been on the roster for like 4 years. He's a former Youngstown State guy. He was there when I went to school. He caught like an amazing pass to get Youngstown to the national championship game that year. I'll never forget it. But it's just a shock to me. He's been like 4th string on the bubble for like 5 years in a row, and he's still there, which, shout out to Kevin Rader, but, Kevin Rader ain't changing anything anything on the offensive side of the ball for Pittsburgh with the tight end. So it's a decent tight end room. I'm not trying to dunk on them or say it's terrible. It's a lot better than Cincinnati's. It's just, with Eric Ebron, you have those consistency issues. You would like to pair him up with somebody who's a little bit more consistent. Like was Heath Miller a Stiller? Why am I remembering that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, Heath Miller. Like one of those guys who are more reliable, block heavy. Like then you can exist with the Ebron on the other side and run some counter plays towards Ebron. Like there's ways to exist with it. The Browns do it, David Njoku, even though David was a much improved blocker last year. There's ways you can move around with it. And I think the personnel is at least kind of there for them to be able to have a much improved tight end room this year.
Yeah, for me, they're third. But I will say this: I do like Pat Fairmouth. I know, Tony, you said you don't like him. I remember scouting him before the draft, and I liked him. I can see him potentially maybe overtaking Eric Ebron. I don't know how the Steelers play their rookies. I'm not sure if
he'll play. He'll play.
Yeah,
not this year, but next year. I agree with Sonny.
Yeah,
he could overtake him.
Yeah, he has soft hands. He fought for the ball. I mean, and there was a lot of things I liked about him. So I can definitely see him. Actually, as a blocker, he was okay. If I remember correctly, watching back that film, Eric Ebron, I think. I mean, I don't have to keep putting salt to the wound. The problem with him is inconsistency, right?
Yeah.
And then he is definitely not the Bennett of the NFL. It's just the problem with him was he was the 10th overall pick. I remember, as I keep saying every time, I'm sure Kyle Pitt won't be this, but every time a decent tight end comes, they're like, oh, he's gonna be the next tight end. And that tight end never does it, right? Never does it. I mean, there's a couple that have been picked top 10 before.
It's kind of like how the Raven fans are with wide receivers.
That is true. I'm not gonna deny that. So saying that, with Ebron, I think the problem with Ebron and Deontay is I think Q hit it correctly. It felt like it always was the most unpredictable. I think when they played the Ravens, there was a pass. I think it was against the Ravens. That Ebron was wide open on the right side, if I remember correctly.
I think you and I remember in the same one. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
I think we bit on a play action. Something happened. It was like a 3 or 4 yard pass, but he would have been wide open to run at least 10 more, right? He just dropped it with nobody in sight, nobody in close, and that was the season of Ebron right there, right? Meaning that he had those. I'm sure he had some amazing catches as well, where he was contested, but inconsistency. And again, Fairmouth, I like him. I already said the rookies for me. I grade him a little bit differently. So all that, I think the Steelers will have eventually a better room than they had last year. But for now, go ahead, Ace.
The crazy thing is guess who was second last year in tight end receiving yards in the division?
Ebron.
Like, just as a player, it's Ebron. It's crazy because
yeah.
we're talking bad about him, and it's just the inconsistency because we probably feel like he could do a little bit better than he did. I mean, but he did have 558 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns, which isn't horrible numbers, but you just feel like he could have done so much more, and you really just remember a lot of the drops. And that's why I said he had a lot of Jermaine Gresham in him, because Jermaine Gresham would fumble and stuff, and he'd have seasons with 500, 600 yards, but supposedly before the guys like Kelsey and these guys get in 1,000 yards, that was generally good tight end numbers, but it's just the inconsistency.
So some of Ebron's numbers just come from the fact that Steelers threw the ball so much. I mean, he had almost 100 targets. But no, I'm with you. I mean, look, Ebron was a good player for them last year. The issue and another reason why these drops keep coming up when we talk about the Steelers is because the Steelers did not have big plays last year. I mean, they weren't a team that you were afraid was going to beat you for 50, 60, 70 yards at a time. They were going to have to go 12, 13 plays at a time. And so every time they dropped a pass that could have got them 6, 7, 10 yards, well, that set them back an entire drive, right? Because those are drive killers. And so, yeah, I think you're right about that to bring up Ebron's drops, because those were plays that could have been easy yards, and instead it set this whole offense back, and it became more of an issue as the year went on.
Okay.
And there's also Eric Ebron's Eric Ebron too. Like, he kind of does some goofy stuff that invites him to some negative interpretation. Like, it's kind of like a similar thing with Juju, where Juju's a much better player than I feel like people give him credit for, but he does Juju stuff all the time, and you're just like, man, like, it's really hard to just talk good about you, because like you feel like the dude is so not unlikable, but sometimes can be a little bit hard to root for. Eric Ebron, I forget what he tweeted out during the season, but he was an easy victory guy.
He was one of the guys that was super vocal on Twitter about when they kept moving the games around and all that. The NFL is unfair to us. And then he had that one. I'm forgetting what game. Maybe someone in chat can remember this. I believe during an interview, like he came up to a player during an interview to like congratulate them, but like it was a weird case after the game where it was he shouldn't. It was a weird interaction there while he's being interviewed. It was a quarterback of a team that
it was a cringy moment.
It was a very cringy moment.
There was also another incident where I think he was on Twitter and it was like, oh yeah, Mark Ingram, one of the best tight ends in the AFC North. He was like, y'all forgot about me, and it was just like, come on, man, like nobody want to talk about you like that. They said like I'm not chopped liver or something like that too. Like it was. Like, I want to
say that play I'm talking about was Josh Allen against the Bills is when he came up and congratulated him like right during an interview, like interrupted.
Not to play devil's advocate. If he wasn't in an offense where you guys have three receivers that were pretty good, because you got Claypool, you got Deontay Johnson, you got Juju Smith-Schuster. If he was in an offense, let's say, that just didn't have that many good receivers, let's just say, I don't know, Jacksonville, would his numbers be a lot better? Would he have 700 yards? Or
no,
I think they might be worse though.
He got the targets. It wasn't like a lack of target and opportunity. Right.
And then if he's the only wide receiving option, like, you're going to get more targets, I guess. But like, also, you're going to get a lot more focus on the defense. Like, it's kind of hard to focus on Eric Ebron when you're playing the Steelers because you're more worried about Chase Claypool. You still have to worry about Deontay Johnson, even though he does have a lot of drops. And even, that's about it, right? We're going to talk about James Washington.
Juju.
Ace,
Juju. My bad. Juju definitely deserves to be talked about.
Yeah.
You bring up a good point though with Ebron, which is, and I'll append it this way: what would Ebron have looked like in an offense that was more willing to throw the ball down the field, that kind of used him in a way where where his targets could have been more efficient? Because that was the problem for him and Deontay and Juju and the entirety of the offense outside of Claypool, was that no one else was running routes down the field. Well, I mean, James Washington was like every other play, but that's a different story. In that offense, right? In an offense where Ebron's actually going to be going down the field a little more. If you give 90 targets to Ebron, but his average depth of target isn't, whatever it was, 7 or 8, but more like 10 or 11. What do his numbers look like then? Because that's what Indy did back in the day, and that's why he was so successful.
Yep, I don't disagree. Okay, so two things here. Before we remember, super chats are available. I forgot to mention this. Happy Father's Day to all those dads for Sunday. And second, give us your ranking for 4 and 3rd on the chat here. And if you're watching the replay, comment 1 through 4. Who are your teams? Let's go with number 2. Ace. Who is your...
Oh man, no, don't start it on me.
Here we go.
Somewhere else before they start getting upset.
This is when the controversy starts.
All right. So for me, number 2, you guys are gonna probably kill me, but for me, number 2, I have to go with the Cleveland Browns. And the reason why is because when I look at the Ravens and I see Mark Andrews, I see a guy that has the possibility to be top 5 in the league at the tight end position, right? I see Nick Boyle. He's not great. I actually said he was trash on Twitter earlier, but obviously he's a good blocking tight end, but he doesn't offer you anything in the passing game whatsoever. But because of Mark Andrews, that's why I have to put the Browns here. Now, the Browns tight ends they're probably the deepest tight end group easily in the division because you got Austin Hooper, you got Harrison Bryant, you got David Njoku. But when you add up some of those yards and some of the production, it's very similar to what Mark Andrews can do by himself. And that's why I kind of have the conversation when we talk about the tight end room, realistically, how many of these guys are going to play. Now, the Browns, they do have a situation where they could get those 3 guys on, but how many plays does Harrison Bryant take away from Njoku and vice versa? And so when I look at it from that position, Mark Andrews, if I'm comparing around the league, some of the top tight ends, I have to go with the Browns here at the 2nd spot. Austin Hooper, he's not bad, but I would say he's underperforming for what you paid him for. Like, you're not putting Austin Hooper out there to have 100 more yards than Drew Sample. Like, that's not what you expected when you signed up for Austin Hooper. You're expecting him to have.
Yeah, he only played 13.
Yeah, he missed
Oh,
like 4
okay.
games. Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
with a
Okay,
appendix
so
had to
I
be
stand
removed.
corrected. So maybe if he does have those 3 games, he probably does end up a little bit similar. But it looks like Mark Andrews also missed 2 games as well, so he could have had more production there as well. So I think it still kind of evens out there. But for that reason, I'm going to have to put the Browns there. I don't know if I know David Njoku has said that he's committed to the Browns, but David Njoku, what we expect him to do on the field is completely the opposite of what we've actually seen from him. He's got a ton of potential. He's athletic as hell. This guy coming out of the University of Miami, I wanted to draft him, but the truth is he's just honestly not lived up to the hype. I think Harrison Bryant might even be better than him. I think that's probably why he played more than him as a rookie. But I still think that this team, after the season is done, I think that they could move up to the number 1 ranking. But for me, you guys, I'm pretty much spoiling who I have for number 1, obviously. But
Yeah.
that's why I have to have the Browns at number 2.
Tony.
I'm glad Ace went before me. So yeah, like Ace, I kind of went back and forth on this, and I'm glad I'm not the only one who's going to put Cleveland too. But the thing, okay, so I'm going to preface this entire discussion, right? I put Cleveland too, but it's not like I'm saying, Cleveland doesn't have a bad room. And like Ace said, they have the deepest room in not only the division, maybe in the sport, right? In the NFL. I mean, you got 3 guys who I think who can all start. The question is, what do you want out of the room? And this is where I think having this discussion can go in kind of silly places, because Cleveland, we think about Baltimore, we think about this multi-tight end room, but it's really not. They only ran 2 tight end sets. Baltimore did last year on 25% of their snaps. Whereas you look at Cleveland, they ran it on nearly half of the snaps last year. Cleveland runs a multi-tight end set, and that's why their room works so well for what they want to do. Baltimore, on the other hand, was much more last year in 2 running back sets is what they ran primarily last year. And so, for me, it's hard for me because yes, okay, Austin Hooper had the worst statistically, like on a per game average, had statistically one of the worst seasons of his career, maybe the worst season of his career outside of his rookie season. He not a bad player, and maybe as he gets more involved in that offense, as Stefanski starts to game plan with him, he can be more efficient this season. Harrison Bryant's a player who I like. He was talked up coming out of college. I think NFL.com compared him to George Kittle, if I remember correctly. Now he's not quite George Kittle just yet, but I thought he had a decent rookie season. And if you look at the snap count between Austin Hooper and Harrison Bryant was out there a ton. 591 snaps for Harrison Bryant, 684 for Austin Hooper. And then you add to those 2 guys. Oh, by the way, yeah, they also have David Njoku. Just as an aside, David Njoku is also on this team. So it's hard for me to rank these 2. I'm going to put Cleveland 2 because I'm with Ace on this one. What Mark Andrews represents as one of the best tight ends in the NFL is what puts them over the top for me. But this is kind of a, what do you want? Do you need 2 persons? Do you want to run more 12? Do you want to run more 22? Okay, well then you're going to like Cleveland's room. Do you want to run one more 11 or 21? Well then you're going to like Baltimore's room a little more. It's so close, but I have Cleveland too.
Cute.
Yeah, if Mark Andrews would have had the year that he had in 2019 and this year, I think I would be more inclined to put Baltimore at 1 here. I'm going to put them at 2 here. 1, just because I think the room has declined in the last few years. Obviously, you lose Hayden Hurst. I just don't like the depth of the room. And I think that's the conversation ultimately we're having. What's the best room in the division? Who has the best room? And if we're saying the Browns are the deepest, then I think the argument can be made that they probably are the best room. Now, does that mean they have the best tight end in AFC North? No, obviously not. Mark Andrews is clearly the best tight end in AFC North. Even in the down year, he was the best tight end in AFC North. And even a down year for him, 700 yards, 7 touchdowns, pretty good production out of him. So I'm not trying to overblow it or anything. He just wasn't as explosive or take the steps that you thought he was going to make after that big 2018 year. Outside of him, though, outside of Mark Andrews, what else is left in this room? And that's really what you have to ask yourself. Would you rather have 3 guys who you feel like if one goes down, it's not that big of a deal, or 1 guy who, hey, you're going to be great while he's out there, but, if he's not out there anymore, then what are you going to do? Who's there to kind of fill in for him? And Ravens absolutely have nobody. Nick Boyle's not that kind of guy. And their 3rd tight end's technically their fullback in Ricard, who I don't think he's running up the seam for 40 yards anytime soon. Like, I don't think that's what they're asking him to do. So, Andrews, and also we have to talk about how Andrews kind of benefits from the system that he's in. We talked about this with the Browns running backs. We talked about this with every other position group in it. With how the Ravens run their offense, the RPOs and everything, like Andrews does benefit from that more than what other tight ends in the division are benefiting based off their scheme. And he does get a little bit more, I don't want to say easier looks. I'm not trying to take away completely what he does and say it's all schemed up for him, but you add his ability with the extra stress that Lamar Jackson and that RPO puts on a defense, it kind of helped him boost him to a different level there. So Mark Andrews, not going to deny him being the best tight end in the AFC North. Just if we're talking about the best room, I don't think the Baltimore Ravens have the best room.
See, and the issue I have with that, I mean, that specific thing is like, what if, okay, let's just imagine Kansas City was in the division, right? So take Travis Kelsey, the best tight end in the
Travis
league.
Kelsey is a whole step better than Mark Andrews, though.
Right, but
Travis Kelsey is,
they're the same argument.
Not in the same neighborhood.
They are in the
They
same
are not. No, Travis Kelsey has had multiple plus 1,000-yard seasons.
They're
Mark
in the same
Andrews
neighborhood. He's not on the doorstep.
No.
He's not on the doorstep.
This would be like saying just because it is no. Travis Kelsey is a step above every other tight end in the NFL. There's nobody who does anything close to what Travis Kelsey does outside of maybe prime Gronk, like 4 years ago. Like, other than that, nobody's touching him. Like, Mark Andrews is a very good tight end, but he is nowhere near Travis Kelsey. Yeah,
He's
just because doing it. Ryan Tannehill was in the top 5. Is he comparable to Patrick Mahomes?
Where's Austin Hooper at?
Wait. The point I'm trying to make here.
Let me let Tony make his
gap. Well, the point I'm trying to make here, right, is that I don't want, like, I get we can just argue, okay, well, the Browns have the more deeper room and therefore they are better, right, overall, because you take the composite of all of them, right? But my point is, I don't like that argument because if you, like, would you make the same argument if Travis Kelsey were in there, right? Is there a quality of the tight end? Is the argument that Mark Andrews isn't good enough to be better than the 3, or is it just because
that's my argument? Yeah, okay, Mark Andrews wasn't good enough last. That's what my argument was. Mark Andrews wasn't good enough last year to justify him being better than a room that goes 3 deep. That's my argument there. And when it comes to like the whole Mark Andrews, like Travis, I'm not trying to take away or be negative on Mark Andrews, but he is
really that bad though.
He wasn't bad, but you're comparing him to Travis Kelsey.
And I just don't think is he not a top 5?
Yeah, but there's a obvious gap between what Travis Kelsey produces with the Kansas City Chiefs in that offense.
Travis Kelsey and Mark Andrews is not as wide as it is.
It's like 400 yards and 5 touchdowns. And that's a whole production for one of the.
That is like.
No, it's a massive gap, Ace. That is a massive gap.
I'm not saying that
is a wide gap between those two.
After you say Travis Kelsey, after you say Darren Waller, after you say George Kittle,
huge gap.
Gonna get ready to say Mark Andrews?
Huge gap. No. There's George. Well, there's everybody you said minus George Kittle. Huge gap. George Kittle. Huge gap. Travis Kelsey. Like, yeah, he might be 3 or 4 or 5 to Travis Kelsey's 1, but let's not act like they're on the same, like this is equal grouping. Like, it's the equal amount of space.
I didn't say he was on the
They're not, though. Like, they're not. Travis Kelsey in a different neighborhood than literally every other tight end in the NFL. Like,
so he's
the leading receiver for the Chiefs. He's the leading receivers for the most explosive offense in football. Did we not see what he did in the playoffs last year versus the Bills, where he single-handedly?
Travis Kelsey is the number one. He's one of the top receivers in the NFL. I just said that he's a top 5 guy.
Yeah, he's one of the top receivers in the NFL. Like, Travis Kelsey is one of the best receivers in the NFL. Then this is like what we talked about with the draft, right? Kyle Pitts is one of the best receivers in the draft. And then there's the second best tight end. They're not in the same neighborhood because they're 1 and 2 on that board.
The other guy didn't go in the first round though. He went in the second round. I don't think.
Isn't there? Wouldn't you argue, Quincy, that there's an equal gap between Kelsey and Andrews as there is between Andrews and Hooper? Would you argue that?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think that gap's equal. I don't think that gap's equal. I think there's a considerable gap there. But again, when you add Njoku, when you add Harrison Bryant, I think that kind of closes the gap there. Like, the production was a little bit more for the Browns there than it was with just what you got from Mark Andrews.
Let me say a couple of things here. I think
you're putting the Ravens too.
No. I think I was gonna say that I agree with Q here that Kelsey's in a different stratosphere, right? I will attend to that. I think Kelsey is. I think you said like Gronk, right? Gronk, when Gronk was peak Gronk was in a different world.
So where's Darren Waller at? Is he?
No.
He's a tight end. Like
Yeah.
we talk about Darren Waller as a tight end. We talk about Travis Kelsey as one of the best receivers in football. There is a clear, like that's a different delineation.
I
He's
would
in a
say
different conversation.
I would say
Waller's good. Yeah.
Waller's good. Nigga, I'm not saying anybody that you mentioned was bad, by the way. I don't know how this is getting how this is being communicated as, I think Mark Andrews is not good. I think he's very good. I think he's one of the best tight ends in football. I just think if we're just going to say, since he's one of the best tight ends in the football, he's in the same neighborhood as Travis Kelsey. No. That's different. No. That's not the same neighborhood. That's not because top five could be very different.
Receivers, you wouldn't say that the first one is better than, or the fourth one is better than the first one.
If Jarvis Landry was having somehow a top 5 year, right? But let's say Randy Moss was in the league doing what he's doing. Stephon Diggs is not like that. I'm saying like
he was like that last year.
No. You're not listening. Travis Kelsey is different. Travis Kelsey is an obvious first ballot. He is clearly a class above everybody else in the league right now. Does not mean what everybody else is doing is bad. I'm just saying Travis Kelsey is out here doing record-breaking stuff every year. Yeah. Like, this is who Travis Kelsey is. He is a superstar at the tight end position. Everybody else is just a regular tight end. Like, Travis Kelsey is in a whole different neighborhood because he's eating much differently than everybody else who calls themselves a tight end. Like, yeah, he plays tight end. You might be able to say this dude's the number 5 tight end, Travis Kelsey's number 1, but they ain't eating in the same neighborhood. They ain't having the same number of production. They're not doing the same stuff as Travis Kelsey, dog.
Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes.
Yeah, let me ask you.
Mark Andrews has Lamar Jackson, who's the bigger benefit to a tight end.
No, he's not a better quarterback than Pat Mahomes. Let's just be real.
He's not a better quarterback than Pat Mahomes, but what he does is more friendly to a tight end.
And Lamar Jackson, we can't act like that.
Wait. What Lamar Jackson does is more friendly to a tight end, and also Lamar likes to target his tight ends a little bit more.
So you think if Pat Mahomes was on the Ravens, Mark Andrews wouldn't have 1,000 yards, and he got 800 with Lamar Jackson?
Yeah.
What is it? What is your argument?
All right. First of all, we gotta let Sonny talk. Sonny hasn't even said that
he's better than Travis Kelsey, but he's a top 5.
How did this get turned into me thinking that Mark Andrews is not good?
You're actually good. You're hating on. Somehow you're hating on Travis Kelsey.
Mark Andrews is good, but we have to be realistic here and say that if we're not out here saying, like, every time we say this, even Sonny says this, like when we compare Mark Andrews to Travis Kelsey, it's not really fair. Like, Travis Kelsey is such a better tight end than everybody else in the league right now. It's not really fair to compare the other tight ends to him.
Kittle.
Okay, but
Kelsey's better. Obviously.
Doesn't Kelsey? I don't want to make this argument.
Kelsey does benefit from having Patrick Mahomes. Yes,
no, doesn't he benefit from having Hill? He benefits from having Tyreek Hill because you can't play Tyreek Hill in one-on-one. You have to play a safety over the top.
So fast. Being on the Chiefs, obviously, he benefits from being on the team that he's on. But you're not going to sit here and tell me he would put up the same. Like, if you just put him to Baltimore, if he was on Baltimore, would we not say that's an upgrade? If they traded Travis, if they traded Travis Kelsey to Baltimore Ravens for Mark Andrews, we'd be like, oh my God, that's a massive upgrade, even though it's only going from 5 to 1. Like, he's a different dude.
Depends on
we got a super chat if you guys want to derail further.
Oh man.
Let's Joshua Hunter, thank you for the donation.
Thank you, Joshua.
Isn't on an offense that throws nearly as much of the sheet.
He only has 89 targets though. You know what I mean?
And Doc Ham.
How many does Kelsey have?
Yards at the tight ends is throwing an offense. Look, this is what I'm gonna say. I enjoy this. I enjoy it a lot. As you see, I sat back. I just watched it. I agree with a couple points from both they're making. I'll put Cleveland at 2 here, and then I'll make my argument with Baltimore later. But I think Cleveland has a good room. I think Cleveland has.
Kelsey had almost 1,500 yards last year. What?
Kelsey had 139 targets.
Mark Andrews had 700 yards last year.
He had 88 yards.
Because he's better. They could target him more because he'd be open more often. That's why he could target.
Tyreek Hill.
He's better. He's much better.
He is better.
Pat Mahomes.
But
this is not a slightly better situation. This is a dude doubled his production last year. Like, what do you mean?
Hold on. If Mark Andrews is in the Chiefs offense, he gets 100 plus targets, right? There's no doubt.
But he ain't getting 1,400 yards.
Well, of course. I mean, he's not going to put up Travis
He's
Kelsey
not going to
numbers.
put up 1,400 yards. But
You make my point right there, Tony. He's not going to put up what? Travis Kelsey numbers. We say Travis Kelsey numbers because Travis Kelsey is completely in a different tier to every other tight end in football right now.
Not,
exactly. Thank you.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Top 3 tight end. He had the third. You said he only had 700 yards. That was good enough for third in the league last year. It was Darren Waller, it was Travis Kelsey, and then
read up the yards from 1, 2, then read up Travis Kelsey yards. Then tell me who was number 2 and number 3, and read those yards out.
Bro,
is there not a huge gap?
It's huge.
When he has the third most in the tight end in the whole NFL, the third tight end in the NFL versus 32. No, there's not that huge of a gap between them.
There is a big gap, bro. There is a huge gap. Like if Derrick Henry has 2,000 yards and then Nick Chubb has 1,800 yards and then number 3 has 1,000 and 1,200, yeah, there's a different level of running back situation going on from 3 to 1. Like
I don't want to derail further, but Mike Gesicki somehow had more receiving yards last year than Mark Andrews did. I don't know how, but that did happen.
Mike Gesicki, oh my goodness.
He's in Travis Kelsey's neighborhood.
Okay, so let me say this. Let me talk about Cleveland
Not
now.
on the doorstep. He's in the neighborhood. He's pulling up.
No.
He's pulling up. He turned on tight end drive.
No. They eat at the same Starbucks, Ace. Now they're in the same neighborhoods. They're in the same neighborhood.
Okay, let me make the reason I had Cleveland against two is I agree that they're deep, but also Njoku has been in this league long enough that you would expect Njoku to do more than what he has done. And I understand Brian took some snaps from him, and I don't want to talk about Baltimore now because that would just take my argument for later. So I'm just gonna make it pure about Cleveland. I like Hooper. The question for me, was Hooper, but obviously he played better in Atlanta before. Well, can he gain back to what he played? I understand that he only played 13 games, but in Atlanta he had a season that he played only 13 games. Right, the year before, the same, right, and he has 787, so he had more production, but different system. You know, it might be that he just needed a year on the system before and no off season. So I understand the no off season thing. But Brian and Kelsey, I think Brian can be a good tight end, and not Kelsey, sorry. And Njoku. I think Brian can be a good tight end.
Njoku's on Kelsey's level. I agree.
No.
That's it. I agree.
Bro, they're not even in the same country.
Potential.
Not even
Madden potential.
No, not even the potential. It's not in the same country.
Yeah.
But I would say this about Njoku, which it was one of the arguments I was going to make. Njoku has a lot of raw talent. Like, he might have the best raw talent of all these tight ends, but he hasn't been able to put it together. And by now, been 4 years in the league, he is what he is. I mean, at this point, there's so many. It's only so long that you can say, "Well, this guy has the potential." Well, he has been given an opportunity. If Njoku play as to the potential, the Browns didn't have to bring Hooper. They brought Hooper because Njoku hasn't been able to tap to that potential. And Brian, I think, could be a solid 2 for them, but. Yeah, I think Mark Andrews and the Baltimore Ravens will have, and I'll explain why later. But I think Cleveland Browns have a good tight end group going to the season. It's just, in my opinion, the number 1 tight end is a good, solid tight end, and the other 2, they're depth, but I don't think they're in anything.
Sonny, you're going to have to explain, man, because that's not what you said about the Ravens running back room.
Oh, I know you're bringing that, but so I'll explain that in the next point when I talk about Baltimore being number 1, because I know you were bringing that, and I'm ready to cash that check too. Okay, Ace, who's your number 1, man?
Number 1 for me is the Baltimore Ravens. Eric Ebron. I mean, not Eric Ebron. I'm sorry.
Mark
Andrews, which
I think is who puts them over.
Very similar to Eric Ebron.
He's ascending. He's definitely not better than Travis Kelsey, but to me, he's a top 5 tight end in the league. He's been pretty consistent. He hasn't been a guy that's gotten hurt. He's just been a guy that since he came into this division, he's just kind of stuck out and been the guy in the division, and somebody's going to have to take it away from him. I don't think any of these tight ends can. And I just feel like when you have a tight end like that opens up the offense, they can completely destroy you. And I know this is a Bengals fan because we suck against the tight end. Whenever you have a tight end that's good and they play the Bengals, they can immediately destroy your offense. So The valuable asset of Mark Andrews is extremely valuable. We talk about now. I will agree he does fit well into the Ravens offense, and I don't know if it's like a Mike Vick, Lamar Jackson thing where the number one wide receiver tends to be the tight end. But I think that he does and fits that mold well, and that's why they were able to trade away. I think a Nick Boyle or the gentleman that they traded to, or Hurst, Hayden Hurst. I'm sorry, that they traded away because it's like you already got a good one. So I think Mark Andrews is what puts this team over the top. And maybe I'm not giving Boyle enough credit. Maybe he is an actual good blocker because that is another role that we do forget about. You do have to have the blocking tight end, and if you don't have a good blocking tight end, it kind of depends. You either have a receiving one or you have a good blocking one. They seem to have two solid ones where Mark Andrews can go to another level. I haven't looked at his blocking numbers. I would just assume that they're somewhat decent. I don't think I've ever heard people talk about him not being a bad blocker because you kind of know the guys like Tyler Eifert, where amazing receiver, probably don't want to have that guy stay in line and block. So I think that Mark Andrews is able to do both of those well. Boyle as well, and I think that's what makes him the number one, gives the Ravens the number one group for me.
Tony.
Yeah, I'm very similar here. Similar reasoning, I should say. Look, and the one, and I want to go back to this point, which is I don't have I don't have super strong feelings about Cleveland over Baltimore over Cleveland here. I put Baltimore over Cleveland because I think Mark Andrews is the most talented player in the division, and I think the gap between his talent level and anyone on the Browns right now is considerable. And I think for the offenses that they run, we think about Baltimore as this two tight end set because that's what they did with back when they had Hayden Hurst, and we criticized them for getting rid of Hurst, but they really didn't run a lot of two tight end sets last year. And if you're going to run a lot of 11 or 21, that and you don't have a dominant outside receiver, well, you could do a lot worse than Mark Andrews. I mean, I think he fits what Baltimore wants to do really well and what they need. And then the same can be said about Cleveland, right? And he fits kind of what they all fit what Cleveland wants to do, which is run these kind of multiple tight end sets. So yeah, I mean, for me, Mark Andrews is the best guy in the division. And I know the whole what if he got hurt, who's behind him type deal. I'm not going to criticize them because their number one tight end is so good that yes, he's very hard to replace.
Cute.
Y'all don't open up a can of worms in this comment section with that whole Travis Kelsey, Mark Andrews argument. Now we got Raven fans out here saying, I actually think if he was Mark Andrews would put up more than Travis. Oh my goodness. This is what y'all did. Y'all did this. This is why I was vehemently opposing this. All right. But yeah, I have the Browns at 1 here. And look, what you say about Mark Andrews, is there a gap, obviously, between the production of Mark Andrews and Austin Hooper? Yes, I do think there's a gap. Do I think that Austin Hooper, given a healthy year, given a second year in this offense, being able to finally get some chemistry, do I feel like he can play up and close that gap a little bit to the point to where Harrison Bryant and David Njoku put him over the top? Yeah, I feel like David's finally put in a position where he could be successful. I know a lot of people get in love with David's potential. I think David is who he is at this point, similar like Eric Ebron, right? They are who they are at this point. They're good athletic tight ends. They're nice red zone threats, but they're not the greatest and most consistent catchers of the football. That just is what's going to be with those guys. But now the Browns are in a situation where they can use David Njoku in more of those athletic kind of sets. They can have him run up the seam and just kind of limit his usage to just what he would be really efficient and productive at. Harrison Bryant is a guy who, look, man, he looked awesome in camp, and then during the season at points he looked awesome, but he also had these weird back-to-back fumbles at times, which really took him off the field towards the end of the season, so he does need to correct that. Make no mistake about it, I think the Browns tight end room has a lot they need to improve and a lot they need to show this year, but I do think pound for pound, if you just look at the room, that they're the deepest in the room. I mean, I think all three of these guys, no disrespect to Cincinnati, could probably be the starter in Cincinnati in a given situation. So when you have that kind of depth at tight end, it's hard to make the argument against it. Mark Andrews does make a good case. Again, I don't know if this is being put on or people are assuming this. I really like Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is obviously one of the best AFC North tight ends, and I do think he's one of the best tight ends in football. Just don't think that puts him on the same plane as Travis Kelsey, who was the second leading receiver in all of football, between wide receivers and tight ends. But I don't want to relitigate that one.
No, I just want to make a correction. I said earlier, I had the filters on. I didn't have them completely off, and I said that Mark Andrews finished third in the NFL in receiving. He actually finished fifth because I didn't have the full filters up.
Yeah.
But he was third in touchdowns. But yeah, I messed that up earlier when I said he was third in the league in receiving.
And Mark Andrews is a great red zone threat. Like, we could talk all day about all the stuff that Mark Andrews does great. Again, but we're talking about the whole room here, and Nick Boyle. And like, I'm not trying to say, oh, we're just gonna put one and one, compare them, and then and not take into account how much better Mark Andrews is than the number one there. Like, I'm trying to weight that. I just think that the Browns have a little bit more firepower there. Now, this, as juxtaposed to how they're going to use all these guys, are they going to use all these guys? This will be an interesting question as the season goes on, because they have a lot invested in tight end. Also have a lot invested in wide receiver, right? Jarvis Landry, Odell. You got a budding Donovan Peoples-Jones, Rashard Higgins, who you brought back. You drafted Anthony Schwartz to get some deep balls here and there. So there's going to be a lot of dissecting with these targets this year. But the tight end room did get a healthy amount of targets last year. I think over like 150 targets from Baker Mayfield, just the whole room combined, or at least almost 200. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. But I do feel good about it. I do think the Browns, and I think this is fitting, right? I think a mixed conversation or a 3-1 conversation, Browns-Ravens, is probably a fitting way for this to end up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say with Nick Boyle, personally, people underestimate Nick Boyle because his best trait is on the blocking side. He's a fantastic blocker. Like, he is a great blocker. You can go see tape from him. Last year when he got hurt, he was extensively missed, especially as our O-line was getting hurt. Nick Boyle would have helped a lot. Obviously, I'm not talking about Nick Boyle being a hell of a blocker, blocking T.J. Watt and, I'm blanking on the Browns dude right now.
Myles Garrett?
Myles Garrett.
Yeah, so I'm not saying that Nick Boyle can block those guys, but as a tight end block, like a blocking tight end, he's excellent. He probably is one of the top in the league on the blocking side. As a catching tight end, what he does best is basically leak on the flat, shorter routes. And I think, Tony, one of the reasons we didn't go more two tight end set is as soon as you lost Nick Boyle, and in the Ravens, any tight end we were putting there that was not named Mark Andrews, it was getting hurt. Then essentially the Ravens just said, well, we just putting Mark Andrews in the fullback, Pat Ricard as another tight end.
Yeah.
Which it wasn't good. It wasn't great. Nick Boyle should be back healthy, hopefully. And he should be resuming the role. One of the things that I was going to say about Mark Andrews, and one of you brought the point that if you put, I forgot what tight end was, I think Ebron in Jacksonville, would that help him? Well, Mark Andrews, when you talk about the Ravens offensively, and when you talk about the passing game, people think, well, Mark Andrews, we need to stop Mark Andrews, right? That is the passing game for the Ravens. Even Hollywood Brown, but people think Mark Andrews first and then Hollywood Brown. So even with that, he's still consistently putting numbers. Last year, because Q, I think you mentioned if he had the year that he had before, you would have considered them putting them.
Yeah, that gap I would have felt like would have been insurmountable.
Yeah. So last year he played 14 games, but the 2 games he missed was because of COVID. And we all know what that does did to a lot of players. And when he came back from the vid, he looked to be a little slow, in my opinion, after he was back. So even with that, I think this team relies heavily upon Mark, right? Very heavily. He carries the passing game with Hollywood on the side, but last year specifically, and I'm hoping this year is different with the Baltimore Ravens on the passing side. But yeah, Mark Andrews, in my opinion, he put better numbers, which was the argument that we were having before, in another team, maybe, because there's two things. I think what Q said is correct. This offense can be tailored to the tight end, and it's favorable to the tight end. It's also fair to say that if you're playing the Baltimore Ravens, you're saying, is the passing down, where's Mark Andrews? And then you're just defending that. And a different team that you might have other weapons, they cannot key maybe on Mark Andrews, and Mark Andrews may be able to have more one-on-one matchups. But still, when he is not one-on-one, he still makes the play. So Mark Andrews for me is phenomenal, but also again, if people tend to forget about a guy like Nick Boyle that does a lot in this team offense. In this team's offense, Nick Boyle has been not necessarily productive in the numbers in the passing game, but he has been heavily part of this offense. It's the reason why the Ravens extended him, right? Because he has been critical for a running team, right? A run heavy team. Nick Boyle, they use it, they put in a fullback, they put in a tight end, they move it all over the place. If they need help in the blocking scheme with any particular player, you will see Nick Boyle lining up nearby to help with the blocking side because he is that good of a blocker. So I think Cleveland is a close second in my opinion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think if Brian, because I agree also with Q here, Njoku, in my opinion, he is what he is. And I will say this, Njoku against the Ravens always seems to have a decent game. Like if we're playing the Browns, I always feel like we defend everybody well, but Njoku is that guy that gets 80 yards sneaky. And I'm like, where the hell is this coming from, right? But Brian, I think, as a rookie, played decent. He had his moment. If he can take another step, and we'll see what Boyle does. Again, he comes from an injury, might not recover well. I can see Cleveland overtaking as a room. I agree with that, Q. But as of right now, I think the Ravens are a tad better than the Browns.
Anyway, I know this isn't about individuals, but who is the second best tight end in this division? Because I really want to say that it might be Eric Ebron.
Probably Eric Ebron.
It's Ebron. Yeah, it's Ebron.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean, look, Austin Hooper had a bad year last year. He looked much better on Atlanta, so you can't, but it's hard to judge. But I think right now you'd have to say Ebron. Obviously, this year could be Harrison Bryant. It could be Freiermuth. Who knows? Could be Uzoma. Uzoma comes back.
Drew Sample.
Well, it can't be Drew Sample.
How much you're paying Austin Hooper if the other kid, the rookie from last year, he obviously showed some promise. Harrison Bryant, let's say Harrison Bryant goes off next year. And I know that he's on thin ice, but let's say Njoku has a solid year. Would you rather cut your losses? I don't know what his contract is set up like, but say, for instance, you can get out of the Austin Hooper contract. Would you rather keep those two guys and Njoku and Harrison Bryant and move on from him and just be like, this didn't work out? Or would you still want to stick with Hooper as your number one tight end?
It's probably still going to be Hooper. I mean, I think they have a lot of guaranteed money. Well, not a lot, but enough guaranteed money to where they can't go off of it. Yeah, but also it's you have to remember, it's not going to be all about the passing production with it. A lot of the times you're going to see three tight ends out there that running the ball, or they're going to be doing some kind of play action fake. So, again, they have a lot of mouths to feed. So I don't know how much of overall production is going to be the deciding factor internally for the Cleveland Browns. Is going to be the deciding factor for fans because that's what we get to see. But just because, I'm petty, I just want to point out that, Travis Kelsey's worst year would literally be a career year for Mark Andrews. I'm just saying. I'm not trying to be petty.
You want to keep going with that conversation? I got a question for you. No. Mark Andrews is more important to Baltimore's offense than Travis Kelsey is to Kansas City's offense.
How old is Mark Andrews?
Well, I would say Travis Kelsey I think he's actually more important than Mark Andrews is to that offense, because that offense is really a lot of the production for the Ravens offense is the run game and Lamar Jackson. And then you sprinkle in, Mark Andrews, 700 yards and 7 touchdowns. Travis Kelsey, he's the number one leading receiver on the Kansas City Chiefs. He's the second leading receiver in all of football in terms of yards. And he's a huge, huge part of that passing attack. I mean, we talk about, is Travis Kelsey benefiting from Tyreek Hill? Have we not asked the question? Is Tyreek Hill benefiting from Travis Kelsey? Maybe that might be the thing.
That might be
I don't think
we talk about Travis Kelsey as somebody who's literally unguardable in the NFL. Mark Andrews is very good, but we don't talk about him like that. And that's just when that is the case.
Is he guardable?
There's a big difference.
Look at Mark Andrews.
Has anybody guarded him?
And you look at how Baltimore has struggled in the playoffs. I think you can look. We talked about Lamar struggling in the playoffs as well, but you could put a 1-to-1 comparison between Baltimore struggles offensively in the playoffs and Mark Andrews struggles in the playoffs as well. I mean, when you shut down Mark Andrews,
his prime right now, I don't know if we've seen his prime. I'm not saying his prime is 1,400 yards, but I don't think this is where he's capping off at.
Yeah, he just turned 25. Ace, you
He's just
asked.
25. He's only been in the league like 3 years. So
I'm,
I don't think
I'm
we've even
shocked.
seen his
Look, how old do you guys think Hooper is?
Hooper's what,
Austin
20,
Hooper?
25?
He's 26.
He's still kinda
26.
young.
I thought he was older than that. I thought
No, you want to hear something crazy?
Browns
Njoku
don't
is
sound
24.
old. Yeah, the Browns don't sound old.
Yeah, so like
Njoku is
we
24?
see this is a
Wow.
weird thing about
He
you know,
is.
guys
He
who come
was
out
young.
early.
He was like 20. He was like 20 or something when he
Yeah,
got
we
drafted.
write off these guys early, like Njoku. Oh, he is who he is. He's 24. I mean, he still could grow a little bit. I don't know that he is who he is just yet.
I don't know.
Travis
Hey,
Kelsey
let
had 1,400 yards. He's 31. I didn't know he was that old, to be honest with you. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Out of
Yep.
UC.
So here, guys, remember follow us on Twitter if you want to be part of these polls. I think look at this. The Bengals over. I'll say
Told
this.
you.
No,
Called
fans,
it.
that,
Called it.
Bengals
I had that
fans,
one.
nah,
Bengals
nah,
fans, y'all represent yourself well. I'm not even joking
Do it.
here. There's no way you should be having 7.5 versus 3.5. Y'all I mean, Baltimore.
It's the
Ravens-
Thaddeus Moss effect. It's the Thaddeus
Yeah,
Moss
exactly.
effect.
Exactly.
Like Ravens are first, Browns are second, and which it was roughly our consensus here. But like Bengals fans, y'all, I mean, I tip my hat, y'all represent, and all these polls.
Oh God, that just
Y'all
reminded me when you talked about Thaddeus Moss. Now, about Browns fans, I'm telling you right now, I'm not talking about Curtis Weaver when we talk about defensive ends. I'm not doing it.
Yes,
Stop
Weaver.
asking me about Curtis Weaver. I don't.
Yeah, the kid from Boise State, right?
God, yeah, dude,
Yeah.
I get. It's amazing. Like, you would think he's like Myles Garrett. Like, was he that good at Boise State? Like the people.
Well, I will tell you this: he was that good that he was a third-round pick that got cut before training camp or before the season started.
Oh, that's good. That's a good sign. That's a stud right there. Third round pick. Wasn't it the Dolphins? Like, it wasn't even a bad team. Like, it was. If this was like the Jets, okay, yeah, the Jets.
Yeah,
are
they're a
stupid.
fourth round.
This
So
is
the
a
next
solid
one,
franchise.
the next one is pass rush.
Yeah, what are we doing next? What's the next ranking we're doing?
Look, we'll do the same thing. We'll talk about defense. I'll put a poll out there, and you guys decide, guys. I'll put 4 positions, and then that's how we started for offense. We'll put the same thing for defense. And you guys, look, this is why you have to follow us on Twitter. You guys decide who do we come in on Monday, what position. It will be on Twitter. I'll put it probably in a day or so.
How about punters, by the way? Let's go punters next.
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
my
I
God.
want to
Special teams.
Yeah,
Special
kicker.
teams, yeah.
We
Okay,
have
no, not
that-
kicker, not kicker, not kicker, not kicker, not kicker.
Sonny only
Punter.
wants to do special teams so they can do what Raven fans love to do, which
Oh,
is
my goodness.
talk about how awesome Justin Tucker is. Oh my God, he's the best. Even when Justin Tucker missed, it's not Justin Tucker's fault. It's the commentator fault.
Gotcha.
win.
Y'all be mad at Tony Romo with Justin Tucker be missing field goals. Like, oh, Tony Romo completely messed them up.
He does that shit all the
You
time.
guys, look out for Preston Harvin III. 250-pound punter coming your way. Just saying.
That doesn't sound
yeah.
healthy.
Just
Can he
saying.
stretch?
Just
Get them
saying.
hamstrings?
It's like a Mac truck he throws. By the way, he throws a
The corner
great deep
show
ball
is
as
gonna
well.
be-
So
Corner show is gonna be crazy.
So y'all gonna put them in when y'all need
Corners?
a y'all gonna put y'all punter in when y'all need a deep ball at the end of the game.
fine. Yeah. The Hail Mary. Yeah, exactly.
He looks like he can play all night.
Ben should retire if they never do
listen.
that. Okay.
No, they did. No, hold on. Philip Rivers had this. Philip Rivers did this last year. Brissett would come in for deep passes.
And what's Phillip Rivers doing right now?
Well, he retired. I mean, listen,
All right,
Ben's
it
going to
is one
retire after
thing
this
when
year.
they put in a backup quarterback to throw the deep ball.
Not-
and they're
not
like, yo,
unprecedented.
let's bring
Not
off the
unprecedented.
punter off the bench to throw the deep ball because you can't do it.
What
Nah,
Haskins is on the
that's
roster
too
for.
disrespectful. We just gonna lose this game. We're not doing that. Like, no.
Hail Mary time. It's Haskins time.
Oh yeah, that's a punt return right there. If Haskins throws it, that's a punt return.
I want to ask this question. I don't know
His mom
if
just
it's
followed me.
wise,
It's
but
crazy.
isn't the word "goat" the most overused term? I tweeted this earlier.
People have called me the GOAT. I'm like, of what?
Yeah, look at this tweet. I want your opinion with this tweet here.
Who's
I thought-
9?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, my
Oh, they just
Stafford.
called Matt
Darius
Stafford
Slay.
the GOAT.
Yeah, Derek
Oh,
Slade.
my God.
Tom Brady, Matt Stafford, same neighborhood.
Yeah,
Like that's what happens when you see that's
But-
what happened to like Bengals fans. Not to say that Joe Burrow isn't, amazing, but when you
Joe
got
the GOAT.
used to like a subpar quarterback, like years of like Andy Dalton and years of Jared Goff, it's like as soon as you see someone that's not them, it's like, oh my God, this guy's so amazing. And I
but
think
Derek
that's-
Slade, they play with him in Detroit, right? That's why he's saying
Yeah.
it. Which I'm like, I think it's fine that you say 9 is great, But I think GOAT,
GOAT
we
is
crossed
a
into the
stupid
word
much.
GOAT. Like when I hear a guy
much.
say, "Oh, he's the GOAT," and then he turns around and mentions another player. Oh yeah, he's also the GOAT. Isn't GOAT?
That's Goff
Isn't
syndrome.
greatest
That's
of all
Jared Goff syndrome.
time?
That's too many practices of watching Jared Goff be really bad. And
Can you blame him though?
probably
Can you
throw
blame
picks
him
in
though?
Practice. I can't blame him. I'm not mad at him.
Look, I was shocked. I was shocked when I saw this tweet. I was like, "Whoa!" But okay. I mean, he's probably his homeboy, so it is what it is. Anyway, guys, don't forget if you like.
Wait. You don't think Matt Stafford's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time?
One of the greatest
He
Lion
is.
quarterbacks of all
He
time.
He
Asterisk.
is
Huh?
favored. He's in the MVP race. His odds are pretty high, aren't they?
He's in the same neighborhood as Tom Brady. He should be in the Hall of Fame.
He will
The
have a very
college
good year
football
in Sean
Hall of
McVay's offense though.
College football.
Yeah, he's one of the greatest of
Brady
all
in
time
college,
to
yeah.
play quarterback to come out the University of Georgia. Him
One
and
of
Aaron
the-
Murray, baby.
Is he the greatest Lions quarterback of all time? Him and Scott Mitchell?
I couldn't name you any other quarterback of the Lions.
Joey
Yeah.
Harrington? You can't name Joey Harrington? Come on.
When we talk about teams like that have had horrible quarterbacks,
John
like
Kitna?
the Browns,
Man.
like the Lions, it just
Hey,
don't
John
do that,
Kitna
right? Because
wasn't
then you
that
end up
bad.
in a
Hey, you
situation
take
where
that
you're
back.
like,
I had to go
Just
through Achilles
wait,
Smith,
hold on, wait.
Gus Frerotte.
Is Andy Dalton the best Bengals quarterback of all time?
No, because they had
Carson Palmer, Boomer
Carson
Esiason.
kills him.
Who won more
Jeff
games
Blake.
though?
Jeff
They're in the
Blake
same
kills him.
neighborhood. Austin,
Jeff Blake.
Andy,
Nah.
who won more games though? I mean, like who had more success?
Oh man,
Is Andy Dalton the
I
winningest
would say
quarterback
the guy
in
that
Bengal
went to the
history?
Super Bowl versus the guy that didn't win a playoff game.
Oh, Boomer Esiason. Nobody feared Boomer.
Boomer Esiason went to 2 Super Bowls.
Nobody feared Andy Dalton. Come on now. Let's
If
just
Boomer
be
Esiason is just Andy Dalton with better luck.
No, John Kitna is like Andy Dalton is a better version of John Kitna. That is what Andy Dalton.
Boomer
is. He's a
Esiason, this is
souped-up
Andy
John
Dalton
Kitna.
if he never had to play the Steelers in the playoffs. Like that's
We actually got to look this up. We got to see how many wins
Palmer
did.
was way better than Dalton. He was way
I
better.
did not know the wins. We play to win the game here, baby.
Talking about win, you remember that Thursday night game, Andy
Wait,
Dalton had
Ace,
where it was windy against the
hold on,
Browns?
wait. Would you at least say that Andy Dalton is top 5 in Bengals history at
In
quarterback?
Bengals history, yeah, he's probably
Yeah.
So he's in the
top
same neighborhood as Carson Palmer.
No, stop the show. That's it. Wrap it up.
Wrap it up. Okay, Chase Brown, thank you for the donation, man. So who is overall best offense according? Oh wait, yes, thank you. No, I think he's asking for the AFC North.
in the division.
Yeah. So this
That's a
is
good
based.
question.
This is based on rank, and I didn't weight it the quarterbacks. If you ask me, quarterbacks and O-line should be weighted differently. That's just my opinion. But anyway, just on our ranking,
We could rank it. We could do it by PFF's WAR. PFF actually has a ranking for this. How important each position is.
Okay, so
Yeah, let's do it. PFF WAR. Rank it by WAR.
Like, come on, just
vanilla.
say Cleveland because I know this was about to come up.
Cleveland is first, and there is a gap between Cleveland and Baltimore, which is second, and there is a even bigger gap between Baltimore and the Bengals, which are third.
Yeah,
and there is a gap, not as close as you would think, between the Bengals and the Steelers. So Browns, Ravens, Bengals, Steelers are the offensive rankings for these teams. So that's
Like
roughly how we rank, right?
now.
This is basically adding everything, all the rankings, okay? This is how. So thank you for the donation, Chase. Thank you for reminding me too, because I forgot about that. We'll do the same thing with the defense, so it should be fun. Tune in next week for that. Also, guys, please hit that like. It takes you less than a second. Just click that like. Make sure you hit it. Ace, where they can find you, man.
You can find me on YouTube at New Stripe City. You can find me on Twitter at New Stripe City. We're actually, speaking of PFF, me and my partner are supposed to be doing something with them where we will not just be talking about the Bengals, but the Bengals in relation to the rest of the NFL. So please be sure to check that out. That may either be coming this month or possibly next month. So just tap in and stay tuned for that. And then, of course, you can also catch me here with us wrapping up the rest of the positions here on AFC North Talk. So if you're not following us now, you definitely want to be able to hit that subscribe button, follow along, hit that like button because it suggests this channel to other AFC North fans or just people that love football. So that's where you can find me.
Tony.
I'm looking at PFF's WAR right now. They actually have tight end as more important than offensive lineman. Actually, that's it's interesting. Anyway, yeah.
Right there.
Quarterback 1, wide receiver 2, tight end 3, interior offensive lineman more important than tackles.
So the real conversation when it comes to best offense is the Travis Kelsey, Mark Andrews one.
Just because that happened, Joe Burrow got hurt.
All right, you can follow me on Twitter at Steeler Country. You can find me on Locked On Steelers every Tuesday. You can find me on my YouTube channel, Steeler Country with Tony Spirino. And of course, you can find me here every Tuesday, 5:45 p.m. Eastern time here on AFC North Talk.
Yeah, you can find me on youtube.com/Quincy Carey. You can also find me on Twitter at Quincy. Raven fans, don't take it personal. I don't think Mark Andrews is a bad player. I know that's what y'all already just jump into. Quincy thinks Mark Andrews is trash. Just come on, man. Don't talk to me about no Travis Kelsey. This is going to end up just like the Tyreek Hill conversation. Like, please don't end up. Not saying that Tyreek Hill and Tyreek Hill are the same level of difference between those two players. Obviously, Mark Andrews is a lot closer to Travis Kelsey, but it ain't. Come on now.
Okay, you can find me SE Sport everywhere: YouTube, Facebook, IG, and Twitter. Also here, 5:45 p.m. Eastern. If you haven't, please also make sure you hit that bell because YouTube likes to then stop notifying. Because I saw a comment the other day that YouTube unsubscribe me or stop notifying me. Hit that bell. That way you get notified.
And if you follow the Twitter, you will never miss a notification.
That's right.
If you follow us on Twitter, we put that every day. And also, like I said, posts. We're going to be doing posts throughout the year. We're going to do announcements on Twitter. So make sure you follow us there. Thank you, everybody that was here. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Also, don't forget, and thank you for Manscaped for supporting the show. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.